Okay, so what I actually want to do now is walk through sequencing an application with AppV and then actually making it available to our AppV clients. When we actually do a sequencing, we want to make sure we sequence on a clean operating system. We don't want to have any other software installed. We don't want to have done a lot of configuration on it, because the idea is what AppV is going to do is say, okay, here's the machine as it is now, and then here's the machine after the software is installed, so any components that software used. If I already had a lot of software installed on the box, then the installation program of whatever I'm installing may not bother installing certain components, which means they'll be missing from the virtualized applications. Also, want to make sure if we're going to run applications on XP, Vista and 7, we sequence on the lowest OS, so XP. Make sure we've got a dummy printer, a dummy ODBC connection set up, just so those keys already exist on the computer and won't become part of that virtualized application. So to make sure we have that clean OS, I actually use a virtual machine for my AppV sequence. And as you can see, I actually took a snapshot of when the OS was clean, the 4.6 sequencer installed, and my Q drive configured. Remember, we're going to install our applications to the Q drive. And then after I sequence an application, I shut this guy down, and I'll show you that, and then reactivate that snapshot. So with that, let's actually log on to my sequence box. And this guy is actually not even domain joined. He's just part of a work group. I'm just going to connect. So I've got Office 2007. And I've got it expanded. Again, when we do these installations, we want to install from expanded media. Otherwise, it's going to do that expansion on our local machine, and that will become part of our virtualized application, which is just going to use a lot of disk space. So I'm going to start the sequencer. I'm going to create a new package. So I'm actually going to do Office, and for this one I'm actually going to do PowerPoint. So I'm going to do PowerPoint V12. So I'm doing the 2007 version. For comments, we've maybe put information about the type of, more detail on the software, do the compression, the chunk size, etc, etc. I need to create a folder where on that Q drive, and again we use that 8.3 naming convention to give us the most compatibility. So PowerPoint V12. So I'm going to kick into the monitoring mode, and it's just setting up the virtual environment ready to actually capture the changes the application makes. And then I'm just going to launch the setup. So it wants the product key, so I would enter that, then click continue. Accept the license terms. Now I need to customize the installation. So the important one here is the location I want to install to is onto that Q drive folder I created. I can put this in, but I'm actually going to wipe this out anyway. I'll put Saviltech, I guess. And now this is key. I either want to make the software not available, or run from my computer. I don't want to use the option to install on first use, because obviously I'm virtualizing this application. That's just not going to work. So it needs to not be available, or, like I say, installed. And I can go through, and there may be certain things I'll disable. But again, I'm not going to go into details here on actually the right recipe for Office. The key thing here is just how do we sequence. So I'm going to install. And that's now going to go through and actually install the Office Enterprise PowerPoint. So we'll come back to this in a second. So the installation is complete. I could now actually go, for example, install any extras like the Save as PDF feature and Save as XPS. So now my Office programs can save to those formats. I can install service packs, etc., etc. Again, for time, I'm just going to install this one. So the next thing I want to do actually, once this is finished installing, is I do want to launch the application now. This is different from what we might have done in the past when we create MSIs. We don't launch it. Now, I actually need to go into the file system to launch the applications, because it doesn't actually theoretically exist yet over on the start menu. So I actually navigate to the Q PowerPoint Office and just launch it from there. You don't want to activate it. It would come unactivated anyway when it's running on each of the user's machines. So just skip that step. And I'll just click next. If you're prompted for things like do you want to enable update, etc., etc., say no to those. Again, we don't want end user application instances automatically trying to update. That's not what we want it to do. So now maybe access certain functions, etc., close it down. And you'd probably run this 2 or 3 times, making sure you're not getting any additional setup dialogues. We want the application to be basically ready at the point we stop the sequencing. So I'm happy with that. I'm now going to do stop monitoring. Then it's actually going to go through and check, okay, so what was actually installed? Because remember, we didn't really install PowerPoint directly onto the machine. We installed it into this virtualized layer, which is why that shortcut icon didn't actually work. So it's finished doing that. I'm going to click next. It's now going to enumerate and actually work out what applications we have. So you can see, we've got quite a lot of different things here. Many of these I'm probably not going to want. So these are shortcuts. I don't want these shortcuts as part of my virtualized application. Maybe I want the clip organizer. Maybe I want language settings. I'm going to remove all this stuff. So maybe I just have those shortcuts. In fact, I'm just going to have PowerPoint. So now it's actually going to launch it. So remember, with app V, we actually break the application down into the complete package and then the data we need to send to initially launch the feature block 1. And that's what this does. At this point now, when I click launch all, it's detecting, okay, when I start up this application, so PowerPoint, which parts of that file system registry does it need to read to just launch? And those bits are going to get marked as going in the feature block 1. You can see it launched. Now again, if there's particular things I want in feature block 1, I would access those now. File, save, save as. Now I've got my PDF and XPS. And then when I close it, it will detect that it closed and will continue on with the sequencing.